those of you who've played either Battlefield 4 or Battlefield Hardline, you'll know of a little program run by DICE and Visceral Games called the Community Test Environment, or CTE for short. For Battlefield 4, it was firstly used to test improvements to the game, and then worked on with new features, and for Hardline, it was used to bring that game up to speed with what Battlefield 4 was currently offering, and then again try out new features like variations to different game modes. It gave way to some awesome additions to Battlefield 4, such as the Community Map project, where players got to have a direct input on the development of the Operation Outbreak map from start to finish. We got to make some major decisions that really affected the outcome of that map. It was also the testing ground for the night maps as well, with Zavod 311 becoming the one that got the full lighting makeover, so we could all blunder around in the dark, and it also allowed DICE to test out their Dragon Valley remaster from Battlefield 2. So much good stuff to come out of something that very nearly never was. David Serland, lead producer on Battlefield 4 at DICE LA at the time, pioneered the project and convinced EA that the system would bring good to the franchise, and of course, he was totally right. The whole project saw Battlefield 4 taken from something that never really should have been released in the state that it was, and it turned into probably one of the best modern shooters of that time. I mean, the game survived for 3 years, which is probably a good 18 months longer than it would have survived without the CTE, and it had a good, healthy player base, even at the end, before DICE turned their attention round to their new game, Battlefield 1. So does it not make sense then to offer something similar for Battlefield 1? I mean, sure, the primary objective of the community test environment for previous games was to help DICE test the new additions, test them out to make sure there's no bugs in there, and get them working smoothly for a public release. What happened after that was the spawn of much more. Free DLC, additions based on community feedback, and I think the chance to create a more educated community who actually understood the process of adding features into video games. Everyone thinks it's easy, it's actually extremely hard. Surely, that would work great for Battlefield 1. I mean, we have a fair few issues in the game right now that could be tested out, and even to the point where new community requests could be worked on. I know a lot of people would like to see like a firing range or a testing ground added to Battlefield 1. That's something the CTE could be used to build into and check with the community. Going further, the chance to test bigger patches that DICE have been working on before they're released into the public environment. If you had a CTE where a patch could be just literally ripped apart by a core group of players, as was the case with Battlefield 4, I think you'd find less issues when a patch is released. For example, the most recent patch that was deployed to fix the medals in Battlefield 1, I think we can all agree that it didn't quite work and there are still some issues with that medal system. If DICE were to release a patch for the CTE and ask players to root around in the menus and make sure they felt the system was working properly, or feedback any bugs they ran into, then that might have been picked up before the patch was released to the public. Something else, DICE could even test out new balance tweaks for weapons, vehicles, player mechanics, and even more to see what kind of effect those things would have on everything else in the game. Doing that in the CTE, the community test environment, with players who are willing to give up some of their time, will give DICE more and more data about what effects the changes they've made are having on the game, and all of the other metrics that they have to monitor at the same time. For those who took part, I think we can all agree that the CTE for Battlefield 4 certainly changed the game for the better. I mean, without it, we may not be in the position we're in today with Battlefield 1. High tick rate servers were pioneered in the CTE, with first DICE saying that Battlefield couldn't have higher tick rate servers, but somehow the developers figured it out, they tested it all, they got the community's help to test it in a public environment, and then they implemented that fix into Battlefield 1 now as well, allowing us to have a much more responsive experience. The CTE was definitely something positive for the Battlefield franchise and the community, who were able to get involved and have a direct hand in helping DICE fix certain issues, work out bugs, and help create new content for everybody playing the game. So could this happen for Battlefield 1 then? Well, as always, Westie the news reporter is on the lookout for any drops of Battlefield 1 news over social media. I follow a fair few of the developers, always keeping an eye out for anything they might be saying, and I happened to come across this the other day. None other than David Sirland himself speaking to the community about what could be coming in the future. Sirland is now no longer working over in Los Angeles at the DICE offices there, but he's back in Stockholm with the main DICE team. And as expected, his first act was to go onto Reddit and ask openly for people to give their top 5 pieces of feedback for Battlefield 1, or top 5 changes. And the thread went absolutely nuts. People from all over the community turned up and spewed their opinions, hoping that some of their points would get picked up. This conversation over on Reddit started the community voice back over on Twitter as well, and of all people, Danny on PC was the person who posed the question to David Sirland. Will there be a BF1 CTE? Would be a waste not to have one, right? Even though Battlefield 1 state is a lot better than Battlefield 4's. Mr. Sirland replied, would be a waste indeed. Now, of course, that's not a direct confirmation, and later on in the conversation, Sirland seems to impress that he can't confirm anything at the moment, and that's pretty much par for the course. No developer is going to confirm anything until they're all agreed on what it is they're actually doing. But it does at least plant the seed for the CTE being on the horizon for Battlefield 1. I think it makes sense to have it there, but perhaps it's more about timing now than anything else. The CTE for Battlefield 4 came with the connotation that it was created to help fix the game and bring it up to scratch. The CTE for Battlefield 1 wouldn't really need to focus so much on fixing. Sure, there are some bugs that could be squashed, and there are certain things that could be changed with what's available in Battlefield 1 right now, but more I think it would be geared towards DICE testing new features before rolling them out. And there are plenty of people out there who I'm sure would love to get involved in that. I want to know what you guys think today. Let me know down in the comments whether you think Battlefield 1 would benefit from having a community test environment, or if it's just something the game really doesn't need right now. Leave some comments, let's get a conversation started. Everyone's opinion does matter. But thanks very much for watching, and until next time, my name is Westie, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.